So exocrine part is concerned with the secretion of enzymes and endocrine part is concerned with the secretion of hormones, isn't it? So what are the various hormones we see? Insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin. Of course, now here we are only asked about the pancreatic juice composition. That means what is it made up of? It is made up of 99.5% water, solids 0.5%. We have organic and inorganic substances. Under organic, we have all enzymes because this pancreatic juice is concerned with the digestion of all three different types of foods. What are those? Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So we have all these three different types of enzymes which will be working on proteins, carbohydrates, and fats to bring about digestion. Okay, we have proteolytic, lipolytic enzymes, and amylolytic. Amylolytic is nothing but enzymes which are digesting the carbohydrates. So all these three set of categories of enzymes you have to memorize. So other organic substances we have albumin and globulin. Okay. So what is we also have bicarbonate, okay, which is around 110 to 150 milliequivalents per liter, and we have inorganic substances. Under inorganic substances, you can give the list of all minerals what you usually read under our medical subjects like sodium, calcium, potassium, magnesium, bicarbonate, chloride, phosphate, and sulfate. Okay, so that is the composition of pancreatic juice. So after knowing the composition, we are also asked functions of, isn't it? Functions was asked, isn't it? Let me check. Let me take the photograph of this. Composition, functions, and secretion. So, what are the functions now? See, you have to elaborate. Now, there is a table for this. You remember I told you you are supposed to memorize this table, isn't it? So, what is the enzyme, what is the substrate, and what are the end products, and under the presence of which activator it is working, isn't it? So, for example, trypsin, it is acting on proteins, converting them into proteoses and polypeptides in the presence of enterokinase and trypsin itself. Okay, like that you just make sentences. So this will make the functions. So once you are done with composition, then we have functions and then we have regulation also. So under regulation of secretion, generally what do we have? We have like cephalic phase. Cephalic phase means the one which is controlled in the mouth. So under this we have conditioned and unconditioned reflex. So conditioned reflex means what? Actually, the true food bolus is not present in the oral cavity, but still we are thinking about food because it is lunchtime. Suddenly there was a lunch bell and you are hungry and you are not getting time to eat, but still you are thinking of food. Then what happens? Whether you think about it, whether you see, whether you smell or hear about food, you will see the secretions of pancreatic juices will start. That is conditioned reflex. Unconditioned in the sense you have exam and you are much in tension and you are only studying and you are eating food and you are not even knowing or appreciating the taste of food. That means irrespective of whether thinking about or appreciating food or not, if the food is present in the mouth, then also you will see the release of pancreatic juice. That's what is unconditioned reflex. Presence of food in the oral cavity is unconditioned. Thinking about food without any food in the oral cavity is conditioned reflex. No food is conditioned. Food in the mouth is unconditioned. So, which nerve is stimulated here? Vagus nerve, and it is causing the pancreas to contract and release pancreatic juice. So, where is the pancreatic juice released in the GIT? In which part of the GIT? Ritika? Where is the pancreatic juice released, Peter? In the second part of the duodenum, isn't it? So what other juices you will see along with pancreatic juice? Bile juice, isn't it? So this is cephalic phase. After cephalic phase, we know the food is now moving from the mouth to the stomach. So in the stomach, you have the local hormones like gastrin. better. So in the stomach, we have gastrin hormone, which is causing the pancreatic juice to be secreted. So when you talk about intestinal phase, we have chyme. Partially digested food in the intestine is called as chyme. So this is very, very important. We have two hormones, secretin and cholecystokinin. So whenever secretin hormone is released in the intestine, you will see pancreatic juice rich in bicarbonate is coming. What is the reason why the bicarbonate is rich here? Because you will see this bicarbonate will neutralize the acid present in the stomach. The contents when they have moved from the stomach are acidic and this bicarbonate is actually neutralizing the acid. Okay, then so cholecystokinin is responsible for the release of pancreatic juice rich in enzymes, what we have studied. Okay, beta. So that is all about this. So apart from this, what else is asked, beta? So we have seen composition, function, secretion, regulation. Everything is over. Now coming to blood pressure. So what are the various regulations of blood pressure? Can anybody list fast? Blood pressure, page 602. What are the various mechanisms? Chavi, Imad, Ritika, do you remember, beta? We have 4 different mechanisms. Are you with me, Imad? You unmute yourself. Chavi?
Yes, ma'am.
Haan, beta, do you remember what are the 4 mechanisms? Do you remember or not? It's okay even if you don't remember. Ritika? Okay. See, let us first of all define what is blood pressure. So, the blood pressure is nothing but the pressure which is exerted on the walls of blood vessels. Okay. Lateral pressure exerted by column of blood on the walls of arteries. It's actually called as blood pressure. So, under this, so we have systolic blood pressure. What is the normal blood pressure? We have 120 by 80, isn't it? So that is the normal, usual record what we have. 120 is considered as systolic, then and 80 is generally considered as diastolic. Okay, of course we have range. Systolic may range from 110 to 140. Diastolic may range from 60 to 80. Pulse pressure is nothing but difference between systolic and diastolic. That is 120 minus 80, it comes to 40. Okay, mean arterial blood pressure is nothing but, you just remember this formula. Diastolic pressure plus 1/3 of pulse pressure. Diastolic we know is 80. Okay, 1/3 of pulse pressure we know is 40 divided by 3. So mean arterial blood pressure comes to 93.3. Now let us see what are the 4 mechanisms with the help of which the blood pressure is regulated. It's very important, frequently asked as a question. So what are the 4 mechanisms we have here? Nervous mechanism, renal mechanism, hormonal mechanism, local mechanism. Nervous mechanism in the sense the information is coming from brain via vagus and the glossopharyngeal nerve, regulating the receptors which we find in the carotid and aortic bodies. Okay, renal mechanism is, it is increasing the reabsorption of water from renal tubules and expanding the blood volume. That's how the kidneys will regulate. I will elaborate everything. Hormonal mechanism. We have list of hormones which are increasing blood pressure. We have also list of hormones which are reducing blood pressure by the mechanism of vasoconstriction and vasodilatation. How they do, we will elaborate. Then local mechanism, this and this mechanisms are same. Okay, beta? We will this. Now let us elaborate now. See, before I take you to the elaborating point, I should take you back to one picture which will help us to understand easily when I was, this picture. So this is arch of aorta, okay, and this is common carotid artery. We have external carotid and internal carotid artery. On the right side, we have brachiocephalic trunk from where you have common carotid, then external and internal carotid arteries. So if you observe in arch of aorta, we have certain receptors which are called as aortic body. Similarly, at the external and internal carotid artery junction, you are finding there is a sinus. Sinus means some bulge. Okay, there also you are finding receptors, that is carotid body. So in the aortic body and carotid body, we have nerve endings which are called as special receptors which are carrying information to the brain. Okay, so in order to regulate blood pressure, for example, see here from the aorta, the name of this blood nerve is aortic nerve. Aortic nerve is nothing but vagus nerve, 10th cranial nerve. And from the bifurcation of this common carotid, you are finding there is nerve of Herring, which is nothing but glossopharyngeal nerve. Okay, so suppose, see, this picture will help us understand this Mary's reflex. This itself can be 5 marks or 3 marks question. So whenever blood pressure is increased, so these receptors, which are called as baroreceptors, they are actually chemoreceptors also here. So baro means what? They read pressure changes. Okay, so these baroreceptors, okay, so they take the information through these two cranial nerves, that is glossopharyngeal and vagus, and the information is going to nucleus of tractus solitarius. Okay, so in the brain you have like vasodilator area. Okay, so this which is increasing the vagal tone, that means initially the blood pressure is high. Now what is happening? Because of the vasodilatation, peripheral, please remember one point what you should make a note it, please. See, peripheral vasodilatation will cause pooling of blood in the tissues, because of which venous return will be reduced and cardiac output will be reduced and blood pressure will be reduced. Okay, so here it is causing vasodilatation of peripheral, like all blood vessels, because of which blood is accumulated in the tissues. Okay, the one which is coming to the heart is reduced. Okay, so that is. So now see here, are you understanding? One of you please speak to me. Chavi, Imad, Ritika, please. It should be little interaction.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good, beta. Ritika, please keep in unmuted position. Just speak to me so that it will be a positive encouragement for me, beta.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, beta. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. So when blood pressure is high, there is peripheral vasodilatation. So whenever peripheral vasodilatation is there, the blood which is coming back to heart is less. Okay, cardiac output is less, so blood pressure is also less. So initially the blood pressure was high because of these receptors. Okay, because of the information carried to the brain, now the heart rate has reduced. You call it as bradycardia. So this is the first mechanism what we are learning, that is nervous mechanism. Now we will go back to page 602 to elaborate the details. Same thing will be there, but the picture is there, no? So which has helped us to understand better. Okay, beta. Now see here. See. Now regulation, 4 mechanisms. Now what is the first mechanism we are learning? Nervous mechanism. So same thing.
Nervous.
Beta. So in nervous mechanism, we are now talking about baroreceptor mechanism. So whenever blood pressure is high, these baroreceptors, where we have seen at carotid and aortic bodies, the information is going via glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves to nucleus tractus solitarius, which brings about vasodilatation, which is nothing but stimulation of vasodilatation is nothing but inhibition of vasoconstriction. That means peripheral vasodilatation. Please remember, because in all the 3 mechanisms, this point will come. In tissues, there is vasodilatation, because of which blood is now accumulated in tissues only. So venous return to the heart is less, cardiac output is less, blood pressure is also less. That's how you see the BP was high initially, now it has come back to normal. That means it has now reduced. Okay, so the various mechanisms, increase in vagal tone is nothing but decrease in vasomotor tone. That means the blood vessels are dilated. Okay, heart rate is reduced, reduction in cardiac output. That's the reason blood pressure is comparatively less now. That means from high, it has now come back to normal. So this is the first mechanism, that is nervous mechanism. After nervous mechanism, what are the other 3 mechanisms we have to talk about? Renal, we will go. Okay, we have just finished. Okay,
Renal mechanism.
okay, renal mechanism. So do you remember the parts of nephron? Bowman's capsule, isn't it? Glomerulus, proximal
Glomerular.
tubule, PCT, Henle's loop, DCT, collecting duct. So there only you will see the reabsorption is taking place. The reabsorption of anyhow we have this question also, beta juxtaglomerular apparatus in today's topic itself. So I will take you there first 309. Then that knowledge you can apply here. Two answers will be covered and it will help your better understanding. 309. Do you remember, meanwhile think over like what are the components of juxtaglomerular apparatus? Till I open the page.
Juxtaglomerular cells and macula densa.
Very good. See, we are going to talk about the details of this structure better. This is afferent arteriole, efferent arteriole, glomerulus, Bowman's capsule, PCT, Henle's loop, DCT, collecting duct. Okay? No. So now coming to juxtaglomerular apparatus, you should remember this structure better, very important. So we have juxtaglomerular mesangial cells, okay, the specialized cells that within the glomerulus. Outside also we have mesangial cells which are called as extraglomerular mesangial cells. Okay, some of the cells of the afferent arteriole is also modifying to form juxtaglomerular cells. Okay, if you just remember that Henle's loop, it is looping out and it is now lying between afferent and efferent arteriole. That is the thick ascending segment of loop of Henle. There also few cells are modifying to form these macula densa cells. Okay, so all these cells are actually components. Okay, components of juxtaglomerular apparatus. Okay, macula densa, extraglomerular mesangial, juxtaglomerular mesangial cells. Now, what do they do? See, they release hormones. Now, see here. This is our juxtaglomerular apparatus from where you will see the release of hormone renin. Okay. So renin is the hormone which is actually regulating the reabsorption of water from renal tubules. How much to be reabsorbed, whether to be reabsorbed or not, that is all controlled by this hormone. So suppose whenever blood pressure is low, the blood pressure fell below like 100 by 60. It has become something like that. Okay, systolic and diastolic. Or low blood volume. Extracellular fluid volume is nothing but low blood volume. Or whenever there is sympathetic stimulation or low plasma sodium. These are the triggering factors which are stimulating juxtaglomerular apparatus for the release of hormone renin. So this renin will be working on angiotensinogen. This is the hormone found in the plasma. So the angiotensinogen will be converted to angiotensin 1. Once this angiotensin 1 comes, it will be converted to angiotensin 2 in the presence of a hormone ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme, which is coming from the lungs. So 2 will be converted to 3 in the presence of angiotensinosis, 3 will be converted to 4. So all these hormones together, they regulate glomerular filtration rate. Initially, the blood pressure was low. They will increase the reabsorption of water from renal tubules. So we know like renal tubules are surrounded by vasa recta. That is nothing but blood vessels, capillaries surrounding the nephron. Those are called as vasa recta. So whatever water is absorbed, it is immediately transported to blood circulation. So the blood volume is expanding. Okay, that's how, because blood volume is expanded, blood pressure also will increase. Supposing initially, what is the normal blood volume, Ritika? 65 kg healthy adult, 5 liters of blood we have, isn't it?
5 liters.
Very good. Now see, suppose blood volume is only 4.5 or 3 liters, then you will see this mechanism is coming into picture. More water is reabsorbed from renal tubules and more it is transported to blood circulation. So blood volume is increasing. The person also feels thirsty and he will drink more and more water. We also know antidiuretic hormone is also promoting reabsorption of water from renal tubules. Okay, we also have these hormones like corticotrophin releasing hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, okay, which is actually coming from pituitary and the hypothalamus. They also increase the reabsorption of water from renal tubules. So initially the blood pressure which was low, because of this mechanism working, it will increase the blood pressure. Actually, in the control of blood pressure, we will use the drugs called as ACE inhibitors. which you will study in pharmacology second year. Then also you should know this mechanism. ACE inhibitors will not allow this mechanism to occur. That means renal tubules will not be able to reabsorb water. So blood volume is kept always low so that the blood pressure is maintained constant. Is that clear, beta? ACE is very important. ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. So all these mechanisms, this is the second mechanism. Is that clear, beta? We'll now go to 602. Ritika, I hope this is clear. Hema, Imad. Okay. What is the third mechanism we are going to discuss? Chavi, are you understanding?
Hormonal regulation.
Yeah, very good. So few hormones you have just seen here, right? What hormones did we see? But just now renin we saw, isn't it? Angiotensin we saw. Hmm? 6. Yeah. So third mechanism, as Ritika says, now we have, see this mechanism, I hope you understood, the renal mechanism. With the help of juxtaglomerular apparatus, I have made it very clear to you. So whenever blood pressure is reduced, the juxtaglomerular apparatus will be stimulated. Renin is the hormone which is working on angiotensinogen, which is a hormone found in plasma. ACE is from angiotensin converting enzyme from lungs. So they are all working together. They are acting on adrenal cortex for the release of aldosterone. Overall reabsorption of water and sodium is increased. So that means increase in extracellular fluid volume, nothing but blood volume. So whenever blood volume is increased, you will see the blood pressure is coming back to normal. Okay, so this is second mechanism. Now third mechanism, we will talk about the hormones. For hormones, you just need to remember the list of list given in this table below. I told you we have list of hormones which will bring about increase in blood pressure, and we have list of hormones which will reduce. So for example, increasing you have adrenaline, noradrenaline, thyroxine, aldosterone and so on. For decreasing we have vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, bradykinin, then prostaglandin and so on. So basically what is the key mechanism I told you? Peripheral vasodilatation is causing decreased cardiac return. Okay, that means the blood flow which is coming, venous return is reduced, so cardiac output is reduced, so blood pressure is reduced. Okay, so that is how these are the hormones which are reducing the blood pressure. Reverse mechanism, if this peripheral vasoconstriction is there, that means in the tissues all capillaries are closed, so that means there is maximum return of blood towards the heart. That means venous return will increase, cardiac output will increase, and blood pressure also will increase. Please remember, this is the fact what you should understand in CVS. Okay, peripheral vasodilatation will reduce blood pressure. Peripheral vasoconstriction will increase the blood pressure. Because in local mechanism, that is the last mechanism what we are going to study, again we are going to talk about peripheral vasoconstriction and dilatation only. The last mechanism for the regulation of blood pressure is local mechanism only. That is local vasoconstrictors and vasodilators. Okay, beta? Is that clear? Hema, are you understanding? Ritika? Chavi?
Ma'am, can you once show the
Yes, ma'am.
question paper, ma'am, so that I'll see here also?
You want me to show question paper?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We are
Thank
talking
you.
about this beta. Blood pressure.
Okay.
Normal values I have discussed. Mechanism. Short-term regulation of blood pressure. So all these are four mechanisms, no? So under short-term regulation, I'm checking your memory because this answer was discussed. Short-term means fast. All four mechanisms to discuss, it may be time consuming, no? So examiner is specific and is asking only short-term regulation. So under short-term regulation, what do we have? But I have explained all but Nervous mechanism. Nervous mechanism comes under short-term regulation. Okay, nervous fast it is. Short-term means immediately the blood pressure is brought back to normal. See, short-term regulation is nervous mechanism for the regulation of blood pressure. But we have elaborated all the four. Okay, so then we will move to next question. Anybody has taken the screenshot? Okay, ESR is the next question. Okay, what is ESR? Erythrocyte sedimentation rate. So how do you calculate it? What are its normal values?
Sedimentation rate.
We have to collect the blood in a test tube and we just transfer it to ESR tube and we should allow the RBCs to settle down, isn't it? Then we will check the rate of settling of RBCs and then we will have normal values. So we should know what are the conditions under which ESR is increased and ESR is decreased. Okay. Page number. Slight movement of cursor, pages are jumping like anything. See here, ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate. So it can be a 5 marks. Here it is 4 marks, for you it will be 5 marks. So it's the rate at which RBCs are settling down, isn't it? So they remain. So we know like blood is a suspension where we have different types of cells, RBCs, WBCs. Now we are only checking the suspension stability of RBCs. That means at what rate RBCs are settling down. So for which we have two different methods like Western Grenz method and Winthrop's method. Okay. So in Western, so we have two different tubes pattern. Okay, so this first tube, whatever you are finding is Western Grenz tube. Okay, the second tube you are finding is the Winthrop's tube. The graduations, that means here you are finding they are different. The graduations of tube in case of Western Gren, it is ranging from 0 to 180. And in case of Winthrop's tube, it is ranging from like 0 to 90. Okay, so the description will be given here. So then we should know the normal values of ESR. Okay, so whenever you are collecting the blood, how much should we take from the patient? 1 ml of blood. I hope you should have done for your own blood when you were doing physiology experiments. Okay, isn't it? You are mixing it with anticoagulant and the blood is loaded in the tube up to 0 mark and it is placed in the Winthrop stand and reading is taken after 1 hour. Okay, like this. So you please remember these values. Okay, normal values. You should remember. So why should we determine ESR? First thing is it is very easy. It's not even so much expensive and it is easy to find out the diseases. So generally it is helpful in assessing whether the patient is recovering from the disease or not. So first of all, we will see physiological variations. What do you mean by physiological variations? That means these are all normal things only. We should not consider it as disease. So ESR is less in children and infants because more number of RBCs. And it is more in females than in males because of less number of RBCs. Menstruation, it increases during menstruation because of loss of blood and RBCs. Okay, like that you have physiological. Pathological are very important. So you should know what are the diseases under which ESR is increasing. So what are those? Tuberculosis, sickle cell anemia, malignant tumors, rheumatoid arthritis and all. And in what diseases you are finding it is decreased? Allergic conditions, sickle cell anemia, peptone shock, polycythemia, severe leukocytosis. Okay. Now after that, a few factors are also given. Beta, you write everything because it's a 5 marks question. So specific gravity of these are the factors. 3 factors are increasing. So when specific gravity of RBC is increasing, the cells will become heavier. So ESR is also increasing. Rolex means what? RBCs are settling one above the other, no? Like,
Stacking now.
okay, so that is Rolex formation. So that is also increasing the ESR. So when the size of RBC is more, then obviously the settling rate is also more and you will see the volume occupied by the RBC also will be more. That's the reason you will see it is ESR is increasing. Decreasing viscosity, And when RBC count is increasing, the viscosity of blood is increased and ESR decreases. Both are almost same only, beta. Okay, just viscosity, whenever RBC count is increasing, viscosity is also increasing and ESR is decreasing. Okay, so that is. Then from this chapter only you have one more question. What is the next question you have seen? T lymphocytes, I guess. Anybody has taken the photograph? 97 page. From what is the place from where T lymphocytes are produced? Thymus, isn't it?
Thymus.
Thymus.
Yeah, very good. See here, we will see once like what has been asked. Just T lymphocyte is asked. So we know like T lymphocytes, the source is the thymus, and what type of immunity T lymphocyte gives? Cell-mediated immunity, isn't it? Cell-mediated immunity. So now we have a table, beta. See lymphocytes,
What's the question, ma'am?
just T lymphocytes, beta. You want to see once?
Okay, ma'am.
See here, T lymphocytes.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so if this question comes, no, you have to talk about functions of T lymphocytes. Nice table is given. I'll show you the table. This is, yeah. See here. So you just first of all take the key concepts from this table, and under T lymphocytes it has been elaborated. Okay. So now we know like T lymphocytes are concerned with cell mediated immunity. That means they will release certain substances which will kill the microorganisms. So what are the substances T lymphocytes are releasing? Like interleukin 2, 4, 5, gamma, interferon, lysosomal enzymes, all this. For example, if it is interleukin 2, 4, and 5, they will increase the inflammation. What is inflammation? Whenever there is some injury, you will see pain, redness, swelling, loss of function of that particular area. That redness, pain is all because of the release of inflammatory mediators. So actually these interleukins 2, 4, 5 are the inflammatory mediators which are responsible for the acceleration of inflammatory response. Actually that inflammation is important only because it will migrate the leukocytes and it will kill the microorganisms. Okay, that is. Now, what is the next function interleukins does? They will kill the invading microorganisms. They will also activate the other T lymphocytes. Okay. Then we have gamma interferons, which will stimulate the phagocytic action of cytotoxic cells, macrophages, natural killer cells. That means all these cells will become more active in the presence of gamma interferon, which is released by T lymphocytes. Okay. Lysosomal enzymes are also released, which will again same thing. They will kill the microorganisms. Tumor necrosis factor is actually responsible for necrosis. What is necrosis? Cell death. Okay. These are actually special like elaborated chapters what you study in pathology of next year. Okay. So all this. For now, you just try to have some idea about it. Chemokines, they will bring about chemotaxis. Chemotaxis is chemical attraction of leukocytes outside the blood vessels so that they will go out and kill the microorganisms. This details you will see again in second year only. Chemo attraction. That means the lymphocytes are migrating outside and killing the organisms, microorganisms. Okay. And we also have immunoglobulins, antibody. Of course, this is B lymphocytes. So you please elaborate on this. I will send the link again because few more questions are there and there is only less than 1 minute. Okay, please join fast, beta. Okay, because paper will take more time only. Okay.